I thought I heard you calling me initially right when I signed off with that station I was talking to. I could hear you in there, but I wasn't for sure though, because it sounded like a beehive right when I got done. But that one guy in Ohio is, he's not running the biggest beam in the world. He's running a 4-element monobander with a Henry amp, and he gives me the strongest signal I've ever seen on here on 20 meters. He was about 50 to 55 over, and full quieting. He was taking the QRM like completely out. I couldn't even notice it in the background.
Hello, I'm KC8QDQ. Today we're going to talk about the maintenance and repair and troubleshooting of the hygain rotor. This is a very good rotor, should be trouble-free service for years with just a little bit of maintenance. And this is also an update on how to update the rotor to modern standards. This rotor here is a 1978, in which I will show you how to look for the date code on the underside of the rotor, and also how to look for the trouble spots in the connections on the bottom of the rotor. Okay, if you're interested in knowing what year your rotor was made, this one was made September of 1978. This will give you an idea how old your rotor is. Periodic maintenance on these rotors, they should last 30-40 years. I mean, this one here is 40-some years old. It'll do really well. The biggest problem with these rotors with erratic needle movement and them not operating is actually right here in these corroded connectors. This is a very bad design, and we're going to do away with this and go with a better, more modern day connector. Hygain actually went with a different connector, and this is no longer an option available, so you have to actually go to the connector that's on it. You can buy these connectors from Cat's Controller, which I will put some information up for them. They didn't sponsor this video, just I always did like their product. It works really well with all my rotors. Okay, the first thing you want to do is you want to remove these 4 screws. Don't worry about marking it, putting a mark here or anywhere on it to clock it back the way it is. I will demonstrate how you can get it right every time without fail. On these, you have to make sure you don't lose these. These are a thread that is not a standard thread. So if you do happen to break one of these or lose one, you have to call MFJ Hygain Division in order to get these nuts. At this time, I'm going to remove the screws. At this time, I'm going to take off the bottom of the rotor. At this time, I'm going to talk about the ball bearings and the grease. As you'll notice, whoever rebuilt this rotor before put axle grease in it. This is not a good idea. Axle grease is not the proper grease for this rotor due to the fact that it gets really sticky and it likes to trap dirt. I have some grease that I like to use, and everybody will talk about the grease on these rotors, and I'll show you the rotor grease that I use that has been a very good grease for years and years. It goes all the way down to -40 degrees and will definitely do a good job on your rotors, and has done years and years of service on mine. Okay, now we're going to talk about the wedge brake and how to determine if it's good or not. It needs to have a nice sharp edge on here. And inside this, you need to make sure that all these grooves here don't have any marks or even maybe the gears or the catch has been broken off. Another thing we need to look for, which this rotor actually has a bad part in it, is that this should be coming back out, and it's not. Which one of the springs is bad on the inside. And I will try to get a focus in on it and show the spring. Okay, I'm going to talk about the spring. For the wedge brake. As you can see inside here, this side has the spring on it. You want to make sure that both springs are on the wedge brake to allow efficient wedge spring pressure on the wedges. As you can see on this side, the spring is broken, so we will have to repair this broken part in order to make the rotor wedge work efficiently. Okay, I'm going to talk about these ball bearings and how and where to purchase them. This is my opinion. My opinion is I'm not going to buy these from Hygain due to the fact that for the amount of money that they want just to do one rotor, you can literally buy thousands from eBay. These are not a special bearing. These are just a 3/8 ball bearing, steel ball bearing. They rust, the ones that's in the rotor will rust just like the ones that are outside the rotor. So do not, in my opinion, just go to eBay, look up 3/8 ball bearing and buy 1,000 of them. And I keep these on hand for any rotor rebuilds that I do. Okay, at this time I'm going to take this race with all the bearings in it. And usually when you pick these races up, the ball bearings will go everywhere into the far corners of your ham shack. So that's why I always like to keep some of them, because they always go everywhere. I'm going to try to put it into this little pie sheet, and that's kind of how I do it. Okay, now I'm going to take this and I'm going to just pull it straight off. Not worried about it. This even fell down. It's no big deal. When we actually take this is the ring gear. This is another part that you will have to inspect. And now we are in the guts of the rotor. As you can see, this rotor has been severely over-greased with wheel bearing grease. When I put it back together, we will use the proper grease in order to last many, many years. Okay, now we're into the bell. This bottom piece is the bell, and we're going to pull this race of bearings out. Not, like I said, they usually go everywhere to the far corners of your ham shack, but if you notice the way they go in there, I've actually seen people install these backwards. Actually on YouTube I've seen a guy that installed these. You got to make sure you install these in the correct manner, which is the ball bearing part needs to be going down into the race. That's this side. Okay, we're going to take these and we're going to stick them into our cooking sheet here, just so we don't, and make sure you make a big batch of cookies on that when you get done. Okay, I like to clean all the grease, or I guess in this case the axle grease out. I like to just clean it with some WD-40 and a paper towel, just give it a nice liberal coat, and just kind of clean this race out really nice and clean, so this is real ready for the new proper grease to be installed. Okay, we're going to talk about the rheostat. This is the trouble part of these rotors that everybody has difficulty with. The rheostat is a 500 ohm rheostat, and this is what shorts it out as it goes through. So to check it, you want to hook your lead from here on one side of it and to here on the other side of it, and that'll do the whole entire resistor of the rheostat to make sure that it's not open. And you should have 500 ohms, and which this one is 500 ohms. Okay, starting with your rheostat in this position, in the fully counterclockwise position, you need to put your meter lead here and one on your ground, the case of the machine or case of the rotor. Then you turn your rheostat counterclockwise with your finger, watching the meter movement. It should go from 0 ohms to 500 ohms smoothly. And that jump you've seen right there was my meter doing a auto range. We are now setting at 200 ohms, and we keep moving. 300 ohms. 400 ohms, and 500 ohms at the very fully clockwise position. This will tell you if your rheostat is bad or not. You still want to clean here due to the fact that you will have this rotor 30 or 40 or 50 or even 100 feet in the air, and it's hard to get it down. So I would recommend cleaning it, and at the worst case, go ahead and replace it. I'm just going to clean this rotor with a little bit of contact cleaner and just a cloth, and just give it a nice little rub down, and it'll make it nice and shiny. so that the rotor will be, so that the rheostat will work correctly. When you're cleaning this, you want to make sure you don't use like a piece of sandpaper or something, because you might snag this fine coil of wire. This is actually, all this is a coil of wire wrapped around an insulator all the way around. So yeah, that's why I like to use just like a paper towel and some cleaner just to clean it up really good and make sure that it makes good connection with the rotor, with the connector here, the wiper. This is the ring gear that fell out when I was removing the rotor from its bell. You just kind of take this out and kind of fish it out this side. It might get hung up a little bit, but it'll come out. And you want to look for any broken teeth or worn teeth on this here and replace this. I've actually seen these broke from large antenna arrays turning them. They'll actually snap in two. You can replace this with a little bit of heavier duty ring gear if you like, if you have a larger antenna array, but you have to call hygain for the heavier duty ring gear. But we're going to clean this nice ring gear up, get all this axle grease out of here, and put some proper grease in and get her smoothed up and running. Now I'm going to clean all this grease up where it's been severely over greased and with the wrong grease, and get it ready for a new grease job. And we're actually going to replace this connector here on the bottom of it with a nice plug connector from Cat's Controller. Not a sponsor, but makes a very good product. I want to open up this package that comes with the piece that goes in the bottom of the rotor. This will actually replace the cinch connectors on the bottom. And then this other piece is actually for the rotor cable itself that you will install on your rotor cable. One of the points I will make sure to tell on this is when you put these pins inside these connectors, you have to make sure that they are seated correctly all the way against the pin. I've seen these before where they're pulled back some, so you got to make sure that these pins get seated all the way into this connector. But this will replace the connector on the bottom of the rotor, and it will bolt in or screw in and will replace these cinch connectors, which are corroded and severely corroded and will not make good connection 30, 40, or 100 feet in the air, which this is one of the prone pieces that fails on these rotors. So you want to make sure that you get this replaced, and this is what I replace all mine with. If you would ever decide to send a rotor to me, this is what I would replace it with. Okay. I'm not going to do a video of installing this connector because it is kind of time consuming, and I don't think you guys want to watch me just solder connectors. But you basically you have to unsolder these. The instructions are very, very detailed, and this guy does a very good job at detailing all of his instructions on how to install this connector. But I will end up unsoldering all these pins, pulling the connector off, installing the new one, and pulling the pins into the new one. You just have to remember to make sure you pull the pins through the connector and seat them correctly. As I was inspecting this, it looks like this right here is a cold solder joint. It looks really cold, so if you wasn't replacing this, you might want to check these to make sure they got a good solder joint on them so that you won't have any trouble. This is the main cause of the erratic meter movement. This is not as bad. This rheostat isn't as prone as you think it is as just the bad connections here. Bad connections here and where it cinches up with the wire. I'm soldering all of these and just get it ready for the new install. Just kind of got to be careful not to put too much heat and burn up the wire too awful bad. I like to use some Rheostats wherever they went, or some needle nose pliers. I just like to kind of crimp this, and it kind of lets you hold it and you don't have to put tension on it. And then you just kind of give it a little wiggle to get it out of there. That'll just kind of do that with every one of them, or I guess not kind of, but do it with all of them. And then this will get this thing out of the way, so we can put the new updated version in it, and you will be turning forever. Okay, you're going to notice the pin 1 has multiple wires on it. It actually has one brown and two blacks. And in this kit, you will actually only put back the brown wire into the connector that needs to be in there, and then you will ground these to the frame. But we will get to that point here in just a moment. Okay, well, I've got all the pins unsoldered now, and we're going to turn it over, and we're going to unscrew the cinch connector. These can be pretty stubborn. Sometimes I've actually had to cut a notch in these with a Dremel tool in order to get these corroded screws out. But these ones actually come out pretty easy. I even had one that was bad, and I had to actually drill a new hole on the side because it broke out and wouldn't come out, and I had to put another connector on, or screw on the other side. But this is what it looks like with the cinch connector, the old annotated cinch connector out of it. This one will be the one that takes its place. The notch here goes with the notch right here, and you will put it and screw it on with the new screws that come with the wonderful kit from Cat's Controller. Okay, I like to take a marker, and I like to just mark pin 1 like so. So that way when I'm installing, I know where pin 1 is. Some of these little letters are hard to see on this connector, so I like to mark, get a magnifying glass and mark pin 1. And then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, these are the connectors for the quick connect plugs for this, and I just kind of like to put them on each one of the wires, and I solder them. There's actually a crimp tool, but I like to just kind of take some needle nose pliers and I'll actually crimp around it, the connector. I'll actually take the wire and I will crimp around it and then give it just a little bit of solder, but you got to be careful not to get a bunch of solder, just enough to solder up here, and don't let it try to run down into here, because you will ruin the connector if you do this. So you got to make sure you just crimp it enough with a little pair of pliers and solder it just enough. Okay, this is the first pin I'm going to do, is the brown one, and it actually had two black wires and a brown one on there, and it was connected together onto pin 1. On this application, you only have to put the connector on the brown wire. The other ones will get grounded to the frame with a little spade connector. Okay, at this moment I have this crimped on there. I'm just going to take some liquid rosin and put some rosin on it so it'll take the solder good. We're just going to solder this connector on here just enough to not there, just enough, and that's going to go into pin 1. Okay, this is where you need to take pin 1, and I'm going to put it into the painted one that I got, and I'm going to stuff it down in there as far as I can get it to stuff down in with my fingers. And then I'm going to and grab some needle nose and kind of shove it down a little further. And then I like to get on the underside here where you can see the pin and grab it with some hemostats or some needle nose and give it a nice tug. And you'll feel it seat and it'll go click. And there you've just installed first pin. Do this with all 8 of the rest of them. Pin 9 will be open. Okay. This is the new spring for the wedge brake that we're going to be installing, because the other one was broken and defective. We're going to take these 2 screws out here and take this wedge brake assembly out to access the spring and the whole bottom actually. These screws can sometimes be stubborn. I had to actually tap on them to kind of jar them loose as I was turning them, but I actually loosened them up because it was kind of hard to hold the camera, and had to have some assistance from my cameraman. Okay, I'm going to pull the spring holder out here. I guess I should have done that slower. And then take this and you put it on the, and then you don't drop it down in there like that. I guess everybody makes mistakes. Okay, take that like that, and you slide it down into this groove. And you put this like so. And that's how we replace the wedge brake spring. The other one was still good. That makes it come out better. Okay, the kit comes with this little spade connector in which you need to put the two black wires from pin 1. The pin 1 has a brown and two blacks. You take the brown and you put it into pin 1, and then you put this connector on the two black wires, and I'm going to ground it to this little hex head bolt right here. I'm going to put it underneath this little hex head right here. So I have the grounded black leads grounded, and these two leads, one goes up to the rheostat and the other one goes to the coil of the solenoid that brings in the wedge brake. And we have also got all the pins installed in the connector, so we are ready for to reassemble. Okay, I'm going to remove all these ball bearings from this race and install new ball bearings in it. These actually could be reused if you decide to, but this is a customer's rotor, so I'm going to replace all the ball bearings. I won't replace this race. If you have to get a new race, because sometimes these break, you can buy these from Hygain. I think they're about $6 for a set. But today we're going to replace all the ball bearings with new ball bearings from eBay that are I think I bought 1,000 of them for like $18. So I would definitely look into 3/8 ball bearings. This one's actually kind of rusted up a little bit, so the guy that's got this rotor in for repair is going to get all new ball bearings. That's what I always do for everybody's rotor that comes into my shop. Okay, when you put this race in, you want to make sure that this part is facing up toward you, and then what I like to do is I like to stick the race in here just like so, and then just kind of put the ball bearings in, and then I'll actually lift it out and put some grease in. But this is just kind of an easy way to put the ball bearings in. I just go all the way around until I got all the brand new ball bearings in the rotor, and then she's ready to grease it with the grease that I will tell everybody, the grease that I use, that I personally love. It's been really good to me. I've taken it, rotors that's been in the air for 3 and 4 years, and they look really well when I take them back down. Okay, the bearings are in the correct way right here. You'll see how they kind of roll smoothly against the wall of the race, and if they're upside down, you'll kind of notice that they're not really even rolling on anything. They don't hit anything. They don't hit the race on the back. So you got to make sure that this is up. Make sure this is up on this on the inside rotor on the race. So and then you'll see it just kind of moves smoothly along there, and the ball bearings like to smoothly roll. Okay, here we are with all 49 bearings installed. I am now going to pull them out, set them on this paper towel, and grease the race so that we got ready for greasing the race. And this is the grease that I use. This is called Super Lube. This is good for minus 40 to 43 degrees C. So this is the temperature, minus 43 C to 232 C. This is what I like to use on all my rotors that I install. It's very good. It actually kind of mimics what Hygain puts in it, but really good, cheap. I actually buy this at Harbor Freight, believe it or not, and it's wonderful stuff. But you can buy it right from the factory. It's about $8 a tube, so it is kind of expensive for just this little tube. You're talking $8 for 3 ounces. So, but this is what really works, keeps the rotor from freezing in the wintertime, and does really good and it's a Teflon based and silicone. So this is what I use, super lube. I just go ahead. Are you still recording? Okay, and I just go ahead and put it like a general amount on this race right here, not a whole bunch, just enough to get it seated and get the bearings coated with a nice coat. Then you take the bearings, same way, have to make sure that this is pointing up. I've seen that done. I've taken rotors apart that actually it damages all the bearings. So I just kind of seat it in there, and after she rotates a couple times, she'll be golden. So that's the bearing. The race is set perfectly on that. Okay, here's how when I said you don't have to worry about marking anything about how it goes back together, and I'll explain this. This is what makes the rotor stop, okay? And it stops with these connections right here. So what you need to do is you need to take this ring gear and install it so that it's right up against this stop, like this, okay? But first I'm going to put some grease down in here to actually got a little bit of WD-40 on it, so I need to wipe it up just a little bit. So I'm going to just put some liberal amount of grease down in this. Oh, I guess that didn't go good. This is just to keep the ring gear nice and lubricated where it contacts here. So you take this, make sure this notch hidden against that going this way. When it rotates, it's going to go that way. So take this and slide it in there. And sometimes you have to take this gear here when you're turning it and make sure it's not on this right here too. And you just kind of rotate these around a little bit. She'll usually fall in there. Takes just a second. And there, she fell down. Oh, nope. Okay, there it is. It's in there. Just took just a second to. I always kind of try to seat it into the gears first. Next thing you want to do is you want to turn this right here, and you'll notice the ring gear start to move. And you just keep moving the ring gear. Now you can overdo it, so you can't overdo it. And make sure this is still over against here. And you keep turning the ring gear, or turning these gears until it is up against it. Still got a little bit of play there. A little bit of play. Okay, there, we're good. Now here's where you need to make sure, up here at the top, you make sure that this is turned the same way that the gear is turning. So you need to turn this all the way to here. Now you're clocked, everything is ready, everything should be exactly the way it needs to go back together. Now, I'm still recording. Once you have everything clocked correctly, you take this, and since you put grease on this, it should hold itself in. And you see these two little notches right here. And if you look down into here, you're going to see them two little notches also. When you clock this correctly, the way I said, it will automatically line up correctly. I kind of take my fingers right here on side right here to hold the ring gear in, and I just let it fall down into the grooves. And sometimes you just got to kind of seat it a little bit, and there, it is clocked correctly. Everything will be exactly the way it needs to be. You won't have to mess with the rheostat on the top. Everything will be perfect. Okay, now I'm going to put all brand new ball bearings in this top race. Now you got to make sure this piece faces down on this one. You got to make sure that the flat edge is facing down. I just dropped a ball bearing, went everywhere, but I have lots of them, and another one. So you take this and you put a ball bearing in each one of these, and then we will grease it after I get all of them installed there. That way I'm not fighting so bad. Okay, I now have all the bearings in the race. I'm going to remove the bearings and grease the race so that it will be ready for the bottom to be installed. And I just put a nice liberal amount all the way around the race. And then put the bearings back in. Make sure that the flat part is facing down. Flat part facing down, or you'll have it all screwed up. Once they're nice and in there, when the bearings rotate, they'll grease all the rest of the bearings up. So that's how I grease the race with a super lube. Next thing we want to do, I clean up the grease in the race here. And I'll put a little bit of grease on this race too. This grease is fantastic. I can't. Everybody always wants to know what grease to use on hygain rotors. This is it. This is by far none the best grease to use on rotors. Tried and true. I've done it, and it really doesn't matter which way this goes on. Just as long as she lines up the holes and the bolt holes. Might have to move it over a couple times, but there it is. She's ready to go. Ready to bolt down. And I don't know the torque specifications of the bolt. I just tight, and too tight's broke, I guess. But and right now I'm just putting the bolts in, and we'll snug these up. Just kind of give them a little snug and go, I guess, and then we'll tighten them up. There we go. Okay, so now we've got all the bolts tightened up. Everything's ready to go. I'm going to take it out of my vise, and we're going to set it on a bench, and then we're going to give it a test run. Before I take it, I'll probably order some new U-bolts for the customer, which I don't have in stock at the present moment because these are all frozen up. These are a special U-bolt and a special clamp. This one actually looks like it's kind of bent. I might see if the customer would like to replace these, or if maybe I can straighten them. Anyway, I'm not really worried about cosmetic, about painting it up and making it look pretty, because I don't think it needs to go through all that. It's going to be out in the weather anyway, and it's going to end up like this again. But as far as the insides look really nice. We have this nice new connector in it, and she'll turn graciously when I hook the power to it. Okay, when you get it all back together, the way I have it, it's either going to go south. It's going to go south, completely south. So I just kind of go a few times around and turn the rotor about 360 degrees, and then turn it back 360 degrees. Just kind of seat the grease and everything into the bearings, and get everything ready to go for antenna installation. And hopefully this thing will be turned on a great big massive beam and making lots of contacts all over the world. Like I said, these rotors are tried and true. They really hit a home run back in I know somebody's going to correct me, but about 60s, 1960s, maybe early 50s, I can't remember. I remember reading the story, but they're definitely a good rotor. They've lasted lots and lots of lifetimes, and they don't need a whole lot of maintenance, but you do have to take care of them every now and again. Everything seems to work on this one really well. I knew it turned before I took it apart. There was a buddy of mine that's down the road, and asked me to fix it and maintain it for him. But other than that, she's a good rotor, ready to turn some antennas. And this is KC8 QDQ signing off. 73's all.